Last time these two teams met, 200 plus was chased down on the back of a miracle named Rinku. It's another afternoon meeting between the same two sides, this time on the Run Fest, the batting paradise that has been the Eden Garden so far. So what can we expect from Kolkata Knight Riders against Gujarat Titans at the Eden? That's the game we're building up to on Visit Saudi presents ESPNcricinfo T20 Time Out, where it's a good afternoon and welcome back to Tom Moody. Feel refreshed, recharged?
Ready to go. Feeling strong.
Saw some high scorers in your absence, including one that was honestly hard to explain yesterday.
Yeah, look, it was great to watch, but I think it's an example of a good surface, a fast-scoring ground, but all impact players coming together at the same time, which rarely happens, where everyone walks to the crease and strikes, in the high 100s or over 200. So it was a delight to watch, really. It's but then again, you don't want to be a bowler in that situation.
Also, a welcome back into the studios to our impact man, Matt Roller. Was found somewhere in Bangalore. We found him back, and he is here. How's it been for you, Matt?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very glad to be back in my my second home in Mumbai after a few days in Bangalore.
Those words have been recorded, Matt. They'll come back to haunt one day. But yeah, we have seen in the absence of Tom in the last 3 days consecutive 200 plus scores. Yesterday took it way past 250, and what all that's done is that already we have seen in IPL 2023, which is just 38 games in, more 200 plus scores than have ever been seen in a single edition of the IPL's history. Last season with 18 was the leader before this, and makes you wonder, Matt, where could this go?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty stunning season for batters already, let alone with however much of the tournament, 45% of the tournament still to come. It's been a really high-scoring season so far. I think we saw that early trend, as we quite often do in the IPL, that when pitches are at their freshest and best for batting, there's some high scores early on. But what we've seen is that been sustained through the tournament. And personally, I think the new rule, the impact player, has got a lot to do with that, because of the fact that every team is batting probably one position deeper than they did last season with that extra batter. And I think while the identity of the player themselves isn't that important in that situation, I think it's more about what it does in terms of liberating the top order and even the sort of 3 and 4, because we don't really see those sort of dead overs between 7 and 10 anymore that we maybe used to see. I think we've seen teams continue to go hard after the power play because they know that they've got to post 190, 200 to be able to defend it.
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of certainly the impact players played a massive role. I think the surfaces that we've played on have been all very good batting surfaces. There have been a couple of occasions where we've had a couple of sluggish wickets, but apart from that, I think that has been the main difference, and that anchor type player has nearly been redundant, given that you've got another batter, but that inclusion of that batter is generally someone that is a high strike rate player anyway, naturally. So everything sort of points north to having a high score.
Do you expect, on the evidence we have seen, that some of the other pitches have started slowing down a little bit? Will it be easier for this run scoring to be maintained through May?
Not if the pitches do slow down. That's you're fighting against the tide from a batting perspective when you're playing on a surface like that. Then you sort of see situations where batters get caught on the boundary instead of the ball being 30 rows back into the stand, which is what we're currently seeing. So we may see, if the character of the surfaces change, we may see a slight decline. I haven't seen any real evidence of any significant change in the surfaces to this point, so I don't see that sort of drastically changing. So I think the 20 plus hundreds, 200 scores that we've seen so far, expect that to go beyond expect that to go beyond 30 plus, I'd say.
The other interesting observation from the last week or so, you'd have to go back to last Friday, the 21st of April, when a team actually won chasing. It's been 9 wins batting first. What explains that to you?
Well, I think my immediate response to that would be to say that the two things are probably interlinked. I think because of the fact that bat first teams are going harder, that means that there's a sort of difficulty in the mentality of any chasing team. It's always difficult when you're chasing 200 plus, no matter how good the pitch is, no matter how good conditions are. Just I think the scoreboard pressure is a real thing that exists, and I think this week of results probably shows that. I suppose the other interesting thing with that in mind is that we're still seeing captains almost all the time. Obviously, you have the odd exception. I think Sanju Samson chose to bat when he won the toss in a night game the other day. But it's still been very rare for captains to choose to bat when they win the toss, and I wonder whether that might change as the season wears on, or whether there is still just this inherent idea that chasing is advantageous in T20 cricket, even with the impact players sort of changing the dynamics of the game.
Mm. Yeah, I see the impact clearly providing a greater advantage at this stage to the batting side of the game against the bowling side. I think it's also a reflection of, I don't think the strength in just a general comment, no particular team, but I don't think the strength of the bowling units across the 10 franchises is as strong for a number of reasons, which we've talked about previously, the injuries, number of injuries of domestic players and international players. So therefore, you're holding onto a very thin thread when you're defending. You don't have that quality, a depth of quality that you would which you would have once had.
And all those high scores directly tie in to this venue. Eden Gardens, so far 3 games played. In those 6 innings, there have been 4 200 plus scores. Average first innings total of 222. For the moment though, before it rains sixes, there's a little bit of rain in Kolkata. The covers are out. The toss had happened. Hardik Pandyas had called it right, and Gujarat Titans will bowl first when they eventually do get to bowl. Let's take a look at how the teams are lining up. We'll bring up Gujarat Titans, who I believe. All right, let's look at Kolkata Knight Riders first, where there are some changes. Jason Roy, who had his a bit of an injury, does not feature. Rahmanullah Gurbaz comes back, so it will be a return of the Gurbaz-Jagadisan opening partnership, which might have been tried earlier. Shardul Thakur returns. He had been out injured for some time, and Harshit Rana gets a game. This is KKR batting first 11. Tom, just when you felt like they finally had an answer right at the top, really unfortunate for Jason Roy to miss out with that injury.
Yeah, that's a massive blow, because he really changed, I think, the momentum for him at the top of the order. He showed what a world-class impact opener can do at the top. So another chance for Gurbaz. He got the 150 in the early part of the campaign, but then sort of fell away. So it's another chance for him to show his cricketing prowess at the top of the order. And we all know he's got a game that, is an exciting game, particularly in those power play overs. The one thing that surprises me with that 11, and they continue to persevere with it, not that I've got anything against David Visa, I think he's a very good cricketer, but to me he's a like for Andre Russell. If there's an issue with Russell, I just think that side desperately needs the quality of a Tim Southey or a Lockie Ferguson as a specialist bowler, against having another all-rounder amongst that. Because now with Shardul Thakur back into the side, he's filling that void as that all-rounder. And as we've talked about around this impact player rule, that the all-rounder really has become redundant. You're better off having a specialist.
Yeah.
And Ferguson is a specialist that bowls 150, or if you opt for Southey, he's a specialist with a new ball that can swing it early on and pick up early power play wickets.
And you can see that this is a team which has been affected by its pace bowling, which just adds so much more to what Tom mentions. Umesh Yadav has really not hit his strides, and today we see that he's not part of this 11, so that pace mix does confound.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation to see with them, because I think you can sort of spin it both ways, I suppose, in that their pace bowling stock has really struggled this year, but then they have really relied on those spinners who've done a pretty good job actually in all phases. Thinking back to that game against RCB a couple of days ago at the Chinnaswamy, the seamers went round the park in the first couple of overs, but I think the one thing that Nitish Rana's done really well is to try and get those spinners into the game pretty early. And while it's generally taken him an over or two to do that, he's increasingly comfortable, it seems, using those spinners, both Chakravarti and Narayan in particular, in the power play. And I think, while I completely agree with Tom's point, I would be looking to have a specialist frontline seamer in there over Visa. I think KKR will be looking at it as well as saying if we can make these spinners versatile and get them bowling in all phases, then maybe they can be the guys that we rely on, and maybe they perceive that they don't need that fast bowler as much.
Just that lineup in that sense, and just that length of those all-rounders, batting contributors, at least on paper, all the way up to number 9, also suggest or reflect a certain lack of confidence in the batting overall, because we know that barring 2 or 3 players, their batting as a collective hasn't really fired this season.
Well, I think their recent form, their batting has fired. Jagadish, yeah, look, he needed to get out of first gear in the last game, and that sort of was his undoing. But Jason Roy covered that with his, with his brilliant half century. But we've seen Nitish Rana, the captain, in good form. We've seen Rinku Singh in good form. We haven't seen the best of Andre Russell yet. So I don't think the batting is their issue. I think there's other issues amongst their 11 and the combination that they're using, and sometimes the entry points of certain players has been a little bit puzzling. So I think tactically there's a few things that are probably more of a concern than just purely just their batting.
And they're also a team, I think it's probably worth saying, that have made a lot of changes this year. Obviously they won the other day, and clearly there's a few injuries around. Roy presumably has gone out with an injury, and Shardul's coming back from one. But again, 3 changes straight after a win. I feel like they've used more players than almost any other team this year.
Yeah, I think Harshit Rana, with him coming in for this game, will be the 21st player they've used this season.
Yeah, which is the polar opposite to the most successful teams of not only the history of the IPL, but of the recent history. The team that they're playing today are the opposite. The Titans are a side that hold tight. Yeah. With their personnel, they have clear role clarity, and they back, their players through thick and thin. Not that they've had too many, thin days.
And I guess it is a little bit chicken and egg, that, because obviously, you win a game and you stick with the team, and you lose a game and it makes sense to change. And it's a question of, are you losing games because you're changing all the time, or are you changing all the time because you're losing games? And I suppose those things can spiral, but it does feel like, and I think, as we said, the stats back that up. KKR have used a lot of players and cycled through a lot of different combinations this year, which maybe suggests that things haven't gone quite as they would have planned at the time of the auction.
Gujarat, when they have made changes, they have been more tactical, say in the middle, getting Alzari Joseph out, and they brought Josh Little in. The big change, of course, in the recent games has been the inclusion of Noor Ahmed. He, along with Rashid Khan, now gives them potentially 8 quality overs of spin. It was on display in their last outing. So how do you see that spin pair coming up? And it just adds a little bit, that much more, Tom, to their bowling lineup, which we felt at the start, in certain conditions, could have been just pace heavy and only 4 overs of spin to go with.
I think it's added a really interesting dimension to their attack and the options that they can use. And Noor Ahmed has done it, exceptionally well, considering he's new to the IPL. It's a big step, particularly for a young player, but he couldn't ask for a better franchise and a better mentor in Rashid Khan to be around his early stages of his career. So it gives them a healthy problem. They've got a guy that can bowl 150 sitting on the bench, but it also gives them the unpredictability of what they bring to the table with regards to the bowling combination that they can throw at you. Clearly, there's not too many players so far in the IPL are reading Noor Ahmed, so that gives them that point of difference. And the fact that he's a left-arm wrist spinner, when they've got Rashid as a right-arm wrist spinner, again, I think they complement each other because they're coming at different angles and creating different problems.
This game potentially, when it starts, if it starts, could pose a newer challenge for someone like a Noor Ahmed. Hasn't played a lot, and now with rain around, you've got the 2 spinners. That will always be a challenging sort of condition for the spinners to play.
Yeah, it will. I suppose the luxury that Gujarat have is that they have so many bowling options in their 11, especially when we sort of look at the bowl-first team as it is. If you think of that game they played against Mumbai Indians the other night in Ahmedabad, I think Josh Little only came into the attack in maybe the 14th or 15th over, and Mohit Sharma was pretty similar, because when Hardik's able to bowl and able to be as potent and attacking as he was with the new ball, and take those difficult overs at the top and really pose a threat, it gives them so many combinations that they can choose from. I mean, Noor could not bowl a single ball today if they don't want to, and they would be absolutely fine in terms of bowling resources and bowling options. So I think that is a real luxury from the captaincy point of view.
Well, I think the key point there is Hardik Pandyas and the value that he brings to any side. One, his captaincy has continued to impress, but what he does is he gives you a frontline bowler with a new ball, so that makes the Azari Joseph redundant, because he's taking that position and doing it equally as well. He's batting at 3, so he's taking Sai Sudarshan's position at 3. So he's taking that responsibility as a person that's not a finisher, which he has historically been a 6-hitter, but someone that can, which he showed in that last game, play that sort of innings that can evolve and then find the 5th gear when required. So he's just demonstrating the class and quality that he continues to bring to the table when fit, and let's hope that the cricketing gods look after him, because it's good to see him firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, there was almost a consideration, at least not among the selectors and team management, I suppose, but on the outside, that if it has to be a one-off for a World Test Championship, just the kind of balance that a bowling Hardik Pandya brings to your team, you would have flirted with that option for that one-off game.
Yeah, but I'm sure it was something that would have crossed someone's mind at the very least, even if it's obviously not been the case. But I suppose the big one from an Indian point of view will be making sure that he's able to bowl a significant number of overs in each game at the World Cup later this year, because India in ODI cricket, if they can use him as a 3rd or 4th seamer, maybe take the new ball, but maybe also come back in the middle overs and sort of have a kind of enforcer role. That could be a real game changer for them, and I'm sure that they'll be looking to make sure that he's sort of peaking towards that start of October, heading into November, and has a huge impact on that tournament, because we all know what he's capable of if he's fit and ready to go.
Yeah, India are hoping to see the best of a fit and firing Hardik Pandya with all the dimensions he brings in. At the moment, it doesn't look like this game is close to beginning. All of Eden Gardens is undercover. It's been pouring a bit, which actually, since we have a coach here, I'd like to ask you, Tom, is this the worst possible thing to happen, where you've named your 11, the toss has happened, and then it rains, so there's no scope to change plans?
Well, it's not as bad as it used to be, because you've got the flexibility of your impact subs, and you've got versatility in that list of impact subs. So where before, because they tossed, and within, I reckon it was no more than 3 minutes, it started to rain. So previously that was a nightmare, because it's like, well, I wouldn't have picked the spinner. But now you can shuffle the deck a little bit, and both teams can make the necessary adjustments according to the weather conditions, but also potentially a shortened game. We might find, not that we hope it's not going to happen, we might find it might be a 10-over game, or even a 6-over game, and then you're looking completely different as a lineup.
But is there scope for that rule to be reconsidered, that if it does rain, even with the impact subs, you do get to revise your lineup before the game actually starts, and you have an idea as to how many overs it's going to be?
Yeah, but you're doing that effectively anyway with your impact subs. So, I don't think that's, just in the IPL, it's perfectly fine. Outside of the IPL, where there's no impact subs, there is a huge disadvantage, and it doesn't seem a right, it doesn't sit right with me that you suddenly, your game's compromised before a ball's even bowled, just because it rained 5 minutes after the toss.
Yeah, I suppose if we look at the teams today and sort of how it might affect it, if we do have a significantly shortened game, obviously KKR haven't named Yash Jha in their team. He's usually been the impact sub. Maybe if it's a 6, 7, 8 over game, they might decide to bring on a seamer instead, if it's sort of still a bit overcast and humid and they think the ball might move around early on. And then Gujarat, I think Gill is the obvious impact sub. in their team. I assume he'll play in almost any circumstance and come on at halfway, but you never know. If it's a 5-over game, maybe they think, actually, we're going to open with Hardik and see what happens. I doubt that'll happen, but you never know.
Yeah, it might mean a little more batting for Rahul Tewatia, who's just been getting those few balls, but making maximum impact. Right, so we're going to leave it here for now, because this might be a long start to Saturday. We don't know at this moment when this game will start, if this game will start. But yeah, we'll hope to get some action. Be sure to stay up to date at the moment on the ESPNcricinfo mobile app, where the commentary page will have you covered as to when this game is expected to begin, whether there is any rain curtailing that happens, and if you do see any action on air, just know that whenever the innings pauses, that's when we're going to be back here. Tom Moody and Matt Roller will continue to join us through this Saturday doubleheader, which we hope gives us a lot of action and not so much rain. So be sure to tune in whenever we're on next here on Visit Saudi presents ESPNcricinfo T20 Time Out.